welcome. And English students have chosen you this week for the faculty spotlight that I do. So congratulations. And
Thank
if
you.
people don't know who you are Pamela Duncan, and you teach
Creative writing and fiction writing.
Nice.
Yep.
That explains why most of the questions that I have from the students are creative writing questions.
Yeah.
So before we get into the student submitted questions, I do have a question that I ask everyone, and that is, how long have you been teaching, and specifically how long at WCU?
I've been at WCU. This is finishing up my 13th year. I started in the fall of 2008. I had taught a little bit, just a few workshops here and there, but not really as a regular thing until I came here. So,
nice.
So I jumped in the deep end and learned to swim. So
awesome. And speaking of the deep end, because we all had to jump off the deep end with this pandemic, someone asked, how has the past year been, and was it difficult to transition to online classes?
I guess I was lucky in a way because almost all of my course materials were already on Blackboard, because I like to save paper, and so that was a way to provide the materials through Blackboard, and did my grading and everything through there. So that was already mostly done. The challenging part for me, I think, was getting used to Zoom, getting used to seeing my face up there on the screen, getting used to sort of seeing these little squares, all these little faces staring at you. And so it just took some getting used to. But I really miss, though, being there in person to interact with students and with my colleagues on campus. But the benefit of this has been, I sort of divide my classes into two groups, and I meet with one group on one day and one group on another day. So I have smaller class size. I have more one-on-one interaction with students, and that's been really great. You really need that, especially in a writing class. So, and then we do the rest online. So it's had its pros and cons, but I have to say I'm looking forward to coming back to campus in the fall. So
yeah, community is nice, especially when you're doing writing workshops.
Yeah. And there's just something about being in a room together, that energy or something. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so you are also a writer, and one of your students wants to know at what age did you begin writing?
I didn't really begin sort of seriously writing until my late 20s. I had dabbled in it when I was younger. I would write an essay here, a poem there, but never, and maybe kept a diary for a while. Tried my hand at writing a romance novel because I used to read a lot of romance novels, and it was terrible. But then in my late 20s, my grandmother passed away, and she was my number one person. And she was the story keeper in our family, the storyteller. And so it sort of felt like when she died, I didn't have anybody to tell me stories anymore. I had to learn how to tell them myself. And as you'll be able to tell from this interview, I'm not the best speaker in the world, but I can write. The thing I love about writing is that you can revise, which is an opportunity you don't have when you're speaking in person. I can go back and revise and make it better. So anyway, about a year after she died, I got a flyer from a local community college offering a creative writing workshop, fiction writing workshop. And when I saw the flyer in the mail, I heard her voice in my head. It was like she was there with me. She said, "Can you say bad words on here?"
Sure.
This is just the way she spoke. She said, "If you ain't going to shit, get off the pot," meaning quit talking about writing and do something about it, and you can cut that out if you need to. Get up and do something about it. So I finally signed up for a workshop and actually started walking the walk and not just talking about it, So, and then I just kept taking workshops and just taking whatever the next step was. So.
Yeah. And what attracted you to creative writing?
Well, I'd always loved, first, before I could read, I always loved being told stories. And my grandmother was a great storyteller. All my family on my mother's side are great storytellers. They love language. They love playing with language. And I love that. And then when I learned to read, I loved reading. I love reading. I love being immersed in the world of a book. And so, and I always identified really strongly with these independent little girls who grew up to be writers, like Jo March in Little Women, Anne Shirley and Anne of Green Gables. You know, I felt like that was me. And also I'm an introvert. I have to fake extrovert in order to be able to teach and do public speaking, but I'm an introvert. I prefer to be, you know, the pandemic, my life has not changed that much because of the pandemic, because I mostly stayed at home anyway. And, you know, I enjoy my solitude and I need it. So, so it just sort of seemed like a natural thing for me because I loved reading and words and stories. And because I'm an introvert, and my preferred way to communicate and express myself is through writing. And so it just sort of seemed a natural fit for me, I guess.
Yeah. And what inspires your writing?
Most of my writing sort of starts with a question that I have in my own life, something that I'm struggling to figure out for myself. And so I sort of work out, I was going to say the answers, but I don't usually get the answers, but I engage with the questions through my fiction. I know that I love that quote from Rilke, you know, learn to love the questions themselves. So I may not get the answers when I write the novel or story, but I at least make peace with the questions. For example, with my third novel, The Big Beautiful, it's about a woman who's experiencing a midlife crisis. You know, her life sort of changes course. And I was in the same place in my own life. Had reached middle age, and I thought, oh God, I'm middle aged. You know, what do I do now? What's next for me in my life? So I sort of can work that out through fiction. Also, I'm very inspired by where I come from, Western North Carolina. I was born in Buncombe County and raised there, and my mother and father both are from the region, and I'm very inspired by this place, Western North Carolina, Appalachia, and also by mountain people like mountain people. You know, my family worked in textiles and furniture plants, so you know that's what I knew growing up. I'm first generation college in my family, in my immediate family. So, you know, I like the idea of telling stories maybe of these people who wouldn't think to tell them, to write down their own stories, but I think they're important. So yeah, so those, and also reading, you know, reading inspires me.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And very cool that you're first generation and now you get to teach students who are probably also first generation too.
Yeah, I love that. And it kind of surprises me that there are still first generation college students. I sort of thought by now everybody would go to college, and you know, so it's sort of, there are so many first generation students and I love that, and I love working with those students, and hopefully helping when I can. So.
Yeah. And speaking of teaching, I have a few questions from students about your experience with WCU. And one of them is, what is your first memory of WCU?
My first memory, the first time I was ever here, well, no, it wasn't the first time. Actually, I was going to say my first memory is when I came here to apply for my job interview to teach, and it was in January of 2008. Excuse me. And I was terrified. I was excited, but I was terrified because I mean, this was a new career for me. I'd never done it before. I would have to move all the way across the state away from all my friends and, you know, what I knew. So, excuse me, allergies. So I just remember that feeling of terror and excitement, but also then when I met all the folks in the English department, they were so kind and so welcoming, and they seemed like, you know, genuinely felt wanted, you know, in the department. And so that helped a lot, and made me feel like I was making, when I was offered the job, I was making the right decision to take it. So, but as I was talking, I just remembered that I had actually been to Western a few years before that to do a reading from one of my books, but it was only for like a day. You know, I was only here a day, and so I don't really remember much about that at all. So the first memory that comes to mind is that when I came up here to interview. So
nice. Cool. Yeah, and it's funny how when you're talking about something like that, it sparks a different memory like that. Maybe that event was a little foreshadowing to where you'd be.
Yeah, you know, I didn't think about that, but maybe. Yeah, it was for the literary festival, actually, in 2003, I think, when I first came here.
Cool. And I've got the 2020 literary festival, sure enough. What is your favorite thing about WCU?
Oh, the people. You know, a lot of my friends, you know, the first thing they notice is the landscape, which of course is beautiful. I love the mountains. It's home to me. But the people are what makes the place, really. But because, you know, not just campus, you know, I love the campus is a real community. You know, the faculty and the staff, they really care about students. They want them to succeed. And, you know, we have the greatest students here. And I love the fact that it's a smaller school, that you can really get to know your students, and get to know their names, and get to know, you know, just get to know them. And, but also just the surrounding community, Silva and Webster and Dillsboro. And I know, for example, when I first moved up here, I think I knew one person when I moved here. And that was it. And I didn't know that person that well. So I was really alone when I first got here. And so I started going to the bookstore, City Lights bookstore in Silva. They were so nice to me. They would always remember my name. And, well, yeah, they had my books, but so they remembered me. But like Chris Wilcox, who owns the bookstore, was there. And, but they were just so nice. And so I just started going to the bookstore all the time, and I met people through the bookstore. And so, and everywhere you go, it's like that here. I remember when I drove through the Wendy's drive-through to get lunch one day when I first moved up here. And back in Chapel Hill and Durham, where I was before, if you go to Wendy's, they just say, "What do you want?" Up here, I drove to Wendy's, the first thing they said was, "Hey, how you doing?" Took me back for a second. It's like, "I'm fine. How are you?" You know, it's just a different world here. Yeah, it's a slower pace, I think, and just a wonderful community around here.
Yeah, and you mentioned Chapel Hill. What brought you from Chapel Hill?
Well, I was working in sort of clerical jobs after I got out of grad school, and while I was writing, you know, working on my novels on the side, and I was doing, you know, like data entry, just stuff that was really boring to me, and you know, I just got tired of it. I thought I need a change. I got restless, and this was after I had published my first two novels. It was after I'd published my third novel. So I was working on my next one. And so I was working at the School of Public Health, where I had worked for many years, and it was a great place to work, but I was ready for a change. And Ron Rash, who teaches here at Western, is a friend. And he called me up one day and said, you know, "How does your resume look? We've got a job opening." Because he knew I was interested in trying something new. So, and just went from there. So I owe a lot to Ron for thinking of me.
That's so cool.
So, yeah.
When we're glad to have you too.
Yeah, well, thank you.
And then someone else asked, what is your biggest success in your opinion?
To me, I think it's the fact that I have not let fear make my decisions for me. There have been so many times when I'd have a great opportunity and I'd be so tempted to not accept the challenge because I was scared. You know, I was terrified to quit my job and go to grad school to study creative writing because financial reasons, every reason, you know, I almost didn't do it. And thankfully I had a good support system. And, you know, while I was there, I met my mentor, Lee Smith. I finished my first novel. I met all my teachers, who helped me get published and or find a publisher and agent. And then I was terrified to when my first book got published, and I found out I was going to have to get up in front of people and speak, and I was going to have to hire somebody to play me because I just and being able to do it. I'm the one who I like to sit in the back of the room and be invisible and watch everybody else. So it was really scary, and but I did it, and I ended up meeting so many wonderful people, getting to go to some really fun places and great experiences. And then I was terrified to come here, change careers, leave my friends behind. But it turned out to be, this great experience. I've learned so much. I've met wonderful people. I feel like I've come home to the mountains. So yeah, just not letting fear make my decisions for me, being brave, I guess. I think I'm proud of that.
Yeah. And that's great to live by, that, not letting fear dictate your decisions. 'Cause I definitely feel that.
Yeah. And it's not easy. And also I learned too that fear and excitement sort of feel like the same thing sometimes. So
yeah.
So just don't just in case it is excitement, not fear, just keep going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one of the things you said you were afraid of was publishing your first novel. And another student asked, what piece of advice would you say has proven most helpful when publishing a first novel?
Well, the first thing I would say is don't worry about finding an editor, an agent, a publisher while you're still writing the novel. And not just the first draft, but then, subsequent drafts. Enjoy that apprenticeship when you have that total freedom to do whatever you want to do with that novel. It's just yours. You don't have to please anybody but yourself, because that's precious. You're learning, you're enjoying it. Anything's possible. So enjoy that and get it in as good a shape as you can possibly get it. And then you can start thinking about publishing, because that's a whole other animal. At that point, your book becomes a product. It's still great. That's what you want. You write to communicate to reach an audience, and you got to sell books to do that. But and it can be consuming, that whole thing about looking for the right agent, editor, all that stuff. So enjoy your time with your book, and then go to the business end of things. And one way to sort of approach that is to start, even before you finish your book, start going to writing conferences, literary festivals, writing workshops, anywhere where you can network with other writers who are where you are, sort of start building yourself a community of writer friends to support each other. And also there are great places to meet agents, editors who are sort of going around to these conferences looking for new talent. Some of these conferences, you can schedule an appointment with an agent and show them part of your work or something. And I have a couple of friends who got their agents that way. They went to a conference, had a 15-minute meeting with an agent, showed them a piece of their work, and they ended up taking them on as clients. So
cool.
And be around other writers and at those kind of events. Plus they're fun. They can be fun. Some of them can be stressful, but the bigger ones, but more regional ones, I've really enjoyed a lot.
Mm-hmm. Like the Spring Literary Festival here.
Yeah, exactly. And Jeremy Jones has done such a wonderful job with this, especially the challenges of doing it during a pandemic, with some online stuff, some in-person stuff. And he's really done an amazing job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's a nice plug there.
Yep.
Because I think we've still got one event maybe today for this year.
Oh, I don't know. I was just looking at the schedule. I think Edwidge Danticott last night. I thought that was the last event, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I'd have to check again. And speaking of advice, another question that I ask everyone is, what advice do you have for students?
Oh, enjoy learning. Enjoy this time in college. I didn't do that when I was an undergraduate. I was not a good student. And I think it was just the timing. But then 10 years later, when I went to graduate school, I was doing what I was passionate about. I followed my passions. I was interested in writing and literature. And so I just had a glorious time in graduate school. I loved doing all that reading, all that writing, being with other people who were in my mind felt so alive. Just being in school then, some say, try not to waste the undergraduate years. Don't save it for graduate school. Try to enjoy it now, go to the classes, talk to your professors, talk to people, get into whatever you're studying and just enjoy the discovery that's available to you now. And also that freedom to explore whatever you want to explore.
Mm-hmm. Great advice. And that wraps up all the questions that I had, but is there anything else that you would like to share during your time in the spotlight?
I guess one thing that comes to mind, just because this has been a challenging time for all of us, this pandemic and online learning and everything, is something that helps me through tough times. Is my sort of prayer or mantra, is a saying that I discovered in a book years ago. It's very simple. It's just, all shall be well, all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. And it's from this woman, Dame Julian of Norwich. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. She was British, I think like in medieval times or something. Mm-hmm. But it's something soothing to me about just repeating that to myself when I'm stressed. All shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. And, part of me is thinking, I don't know how, but I trust that it will. So just throw that out there. It may be helpful to somebody.
Yeah. And you sent a beautiful graphic of that. So let me just share that.
Yeah, I stole that picture from somewhere on the internet because it seemed to capture that feeling of what it feels like when I say that to myself.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Sort of floating, peaceful. Hopefully I won't get sued for using that picture. I don't know who did it, but anyway.
Well, it was a pleasure talking to you and hearing your stories.
Well, thank you so much for honoring me this way. I really appreciate it.